So we're going to go to the Houston-Cleveland game. Now, this game I would rank as our number one to watch next to the New England Ravens game. We saw what happened 2 weeks ago with the win against the Raiders. We're seeing sustainable wins around 26. I'll let Nick talk about that in a second. But I think that this game is really one to watch, really to look at the over-unders on. The last time the under was, you take the under on this one. Last time, again this week, it's at, I'm just pulling my notes up, sorry, is at 49. The one that I think with the Raiders was at 50. So I think, we got to talk about this. Nick, why don't you talk about the wind here?
Yeah, so it's going to be another windy event in Cleveland. It may not be as windy as the game on November 1st. We're probably looking at 25 to 30 mile an hour sustained winds. And I think on November 1st, it was a little bit more like 30 to 35. But still, this is a substantial wind event. Wind direction is the same. It's a very similar system coming across the Great Lakes. And there's also a chance of some lake-enhanced precipitation running throughout this game. So definitely we're expecting wind impacts. Stay away from kickers. I would avoid Baker Mayfield in this. I would avoid Deshaun Watson. I am in my own league. Actually, I'm torn between Watson and Roethlisberger. I'm hoping Roethlisberger comes off of COVID. But I think this game has bad news written all over it again.
I will say this. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, we've seen this before with Baker Mayfield against the Raiders a couple of weeks ago. Like Nick said, we don't expect the winds to be quite that high, but we do expect them to be substantial enough to have an impact. And don't count out precipitation. There could be some lake effect as we have some west-northwest trajectory to our winds going across the lake that may provide some precipitation. So we may have another combo event here. We're more confident in the winds, but don't count out the precipitation. So Baker, Deshaun Watson, as Nick said, I'm staying away from. I'm not buying up on them at all. Although some people in DFS are paying up for them because of that matchup, especially Baker, because the Houston just gives up tons of yards. But I'm not there.
I have a interesting DFS start that I'm going to play for $3,900. I got to grab my notes. I was looking off the side. Austin Hooper, tight end. 23 targets in the 3 games. This is actually, I misspoke. He had the appendix issue, not Devontae Adams. Apologize on that mistake.
Adams was hamstring, but that's okay.
But 23 targets in the 3 games that he played. He's had at least 5 receptions. $3,900 in a game that could be short dump passes, maybe some red zone work. I think Austin Hooper may be a tight end that you take if you're trying to get the value for the DFS.
Are you all at all worried about? I mean, Baker had, I think, not even 150 yards in his matchup against LA. You are playing a Texans defense that, again, just gives up a ton of points. But there's only one pass to a tight end when they played against Los Angeles. I think Njoku had 1 catch for 19 yards. Are you at all worried about his volume? Or are you just relying on him hitting those targets in the red zone?
I'm trying to rely, because I think a tight end you pay for the touchdowns, and I mean I think that's kind of that's how I play with the tight end because of the value, unless you want to go up for a Kelsey or for one of those. But I feel like, to answer your question, Sean, I'm relying on the risk for the tight end on the upside to hopefully get some DFS point or get the value.
So right now, Deshaun Watson is going $6,900 in DFS. Jared Goff is going $65. $100 difference between Deshaun Watson and Jared Goff. Jared Goff is facing off against the Seahawks, who have given up an unbelievable amount of passing yards to opposing offenses.
I know. Look what the Bills did to them. I'm so happy about that. I got to shout that out. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been crazy this year for the Seahawks. Just absolutely nuts. A wrist injury. He may be out. We're still waiting on news. They're thinking he's going to play. But are you confident enough in Deshaun Watson here? Or are you going to pay up for a Jared Goff?
I'm taking Josh Allen this week, but the question between those, I think I have so much hesitation in Deshaun Watson as it is. I think he's got some tools, but I think I'm always scared when Fuller gets the ball if he's going to get hurt. I think that Cobb, he's to me a little bit ancient, but he has some upside there. But I think in this matchup with the weather and the pending and complete like what we saw, I would pay up for Goff over Watson.
I would be going Goff as well. I mean, he'd be like almost my QB of the week. I think he's gonna, especially if Cooper Kupp is in there. Deshaun Watson found his stride a little bit last week. He had 280 yards and 2 TDs. But in this one, and I'm going to bring up a stat that we've been looking at, and we've been kind of arguing about this today. But we were looking at QB throw the ball. What is their velocity when they throw the ball? And Deshaun Watson, believe it or not, is on the lower end of that spectrum. So then we started talking about, well, the winds are going to be picking up maybe 25, 30 miles an hour. And some of his primary targets, like a Will Fuller, are more of the deep threats. So is this going to hurt Fuller in this game or hurt Deshaun Watson in this game? Is this going to limit his upside? Because we're thinking our rationale is, well, if he's throwing the ball weaker, that may have a higher chance of being influenced by the ponder. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
You know, you bring up velocity, and it's really interesting. I mean, I will even, I think I read an article about this too, and like the tight spiral and the beautiful look of a ball, and you think that could, I'm not a physicist. I would say it's an interesting theory. I think it would be very interesting to watch what happens. To me, though, I don't think Watson has a weak arm. I think you get into the NFL, and I think I have to be careful when you're not saying he's a weak arm. I think it's a relative of 5 miles. Like, I think the velocity.
But he's on the lower tier of arm speed when it comes to throwing the football.
I mean, I don't buy
it. You're not buying.
I don't buy it. I think you can still be an efficient passer if you're throwing the shorter routes. And if it's windy, it's going to affect the strong arm velocity, same as weak arm velocity. I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, so here's a question then. Are you taking Brandon Cooks here with he's going for 5,600, or are you going Will Fuller 6,700? So are you paying up 1,100 for Will Fuller for that potential? Or are you going to be looking at more Brandon Cooks that's a little bit more guaranteed volume? He's been getting at least like 8-9 targets a game.
I mean, between those two, I have such a bias with Fuller. I call him Mr. Glass. I'm terrified. He's one throw away from an injury for the rest of the season. I mean, he's got upside, but I would take Cooks any day over that for that price.
I'm in agreement here. I mean, I think I'm a little worried about Fuller. We've seen him disappear. I'm afraid that may happen this game, especially if conditions get a little bit out of control. And Fells, more Braylon Cooks to get the job done against Cleveland. In Cleveland's defense, their passing defense, I was looking at this earlier. They weren't – I'm going to have to take a look. I was looking at their stats for passing, but they weren't awful. Well, they dropped a little bit. So recently players have been able to pass a little bit on Cleveland. But I don't know. I'm still just staying away from everybody in this game. I'm just not super confident with the weather.
So before we move on, I have a question for you. I've got Duke Johnson sitting on the bench. And David Johnson's questionable with the concussion. There's a lot of rumblings that he won't be coming back. Given the weather, do you think there's an upside to Duke Johnson going against his old team, the Cleveland Browns?
Last week he had 16 carries, but only for 41 yards. But he also had 4 catches for 32 yards. So I think especially in PPR formats, he's going to add value here. He's been a proven pass catcher. He was when he was with Cleveland. I think that continues. I think he'll get the opportunities. It doesn't surprise me if he gets upwards of 5 targets. He hasn't proven to be the most effective as far as efficiency on the ground, but they may give him a few more carries, especially if the wind's influencing the passing game at all. So I think he's going to have an okay game. I think solid baseline.